Hi, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel, and wow, was there some exciting stuff coming out today. First of all, we've got Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse debating live on stage today Swift CEO Gottfried Leibbrandt. That's a fun name, by the way, Gottfried Leibbrandt. Also, even in terms of news, Swift dropped a bomb on the stage here. They announced that they were about to make an announcement partnering with R3, and I'll get into that because a lot of people are saying that means that Swift is actually going to be using XRP, and I'm going to tell you exactly what this means and if there's anything to that claim in today's video. Before we get rolling, I want to say real quick, if you would be willing to hit that like button, if you would be willing to subscribe, I definitely appreciate it really just tremendously. Without support from the XRP community, there's no reason I'd even do this. And I'll tell you, the more people we get engaged with these videos, the more people commenting, the more fun it is. And for me, this is just a hobby, to be honest with you. This is not a career path for me. This is just a fun thing on the side because I am kind of obsessed with Ripple and XRP and the whole crypto ecosystem. And so it feeds my my addiction. So anyway, if you would hit like and subscribe, just know it's really appreciated. All right, so getting into this, I did something I don't normally do. I normally don't take notes on what I'm about to discuss because for me, it's just better if I have like a stream of consciousness, like whatever comes to mind in my cranium and just kind of spitting it out the mouth into your eardrums here. But there was a lot of back and forth here, and I didn't want to miss anything. So for this particular video, I actually did take some notes. So I'm going to try and read through it in such a way that hopefully you wouldn't even notice. But if there are any short hiccups here, then that's why. I just want to, again, make sure I don't miss anything. To start, a couple of points that Swift CEO Gottfried made. He noted that there are 10,000 banks, over 10,000 banks within their existing Swift network. And he said that of those, over 400 of those banks within that network are innovating by implementing their GPI system, which speeds up transactions. So for those of you that aren't aware, the GPI system, it's the closest competitor that Ripple has in terms of technology to XCurrent. Because XCurrent, it's the messaging portion of the transaction. XRapid is the settlement portion. And what GPI does is it does, to whatever degree, depending on how many bilateral intermediaries there are in between, but it does speed up to a certain degree the messaging portion, and so that's separate from settlement in a sense. They're still actually settling through the GPI, the Swift GPI, but the liquidity is still sourced through the bank. So in that sense, it actually is still very different from XRapid. But anyway, again, 400 of their network banks in the network are actually moving forward with GPI. And so Gottfried stated that GPI will be de facto real-time in a few years. That's what he says. Okay. That's not accurate, though. He also stated that Swift has never been a, quote, bottleneck because its messaging system moves in real time. And what's interesting, I thought about that, and it's like, how can he make a claim that Swift has never been the bottleneck in terms of the delay? And he's essentially blaming the clients, because you know how this works, right? You've got a bunch of intermediaries when you got cross-border transactions going, from bank to bank to bank to bank. And again, it's a chain of bilateral banking relationships. That's how cross-border transactions take place. And so he's like, it's not us. The messaging works just fine. It's all the, all the stuff in between. So I thought, what the heck does that actually mean? And it's such like a sleight of hand because what's really happening is if you look at, for example, what Swift's Ripple's technology solution is, especially with the combination of XCurrent and XRapid, what it's doing is, the transactions on with the XCurrent technology and XRapid, those are also instantaneous. And it also completely eliminates layers of management. And so with the Swift, historically the way Swift is operated, the messaging portion, they're sending out the message and it gets to whoever next. And then what they're saying is that bank in the meantime, however long it takes them to spit it out, that's the problem. Not the entire system as a whole. How absurd is that? Isn't that crazy? Wow, what a bold freaking claim. So that really grinds my gears, all right? Okay, let's see here. What's next after that nonsense? What's this? It is effectively blending cross-border transfer. Yeah, okay. He wrote, GPI is here today, while blockchain could be years away. And wow, does he not sound like an incumbent saying something like that? Wow. It's like, status quo, okay, you're forcing us to innovate a little bit, okay, but he says GPI, that's the technology they have today without having to implement any sort of blockchain technology. And he went on to state a test, and I had known that Swift had done some testing regarding blockchain, and I hadn't seen a whole lot of the specifics about what that was, but he did cite today, and I don't know if this is new knowledge or not, but he cited that within their network they had 40 banks test blockchain technology just as a proof of concept, and the findings, he said, were that it wasn't much better than what their existing system was able to offer. And I'm going to explain that a little bit on why this is absurd. It's the bottom line is, and I'll explain this in a little bit, but the network effect needs to increase, and that's what Ripple's working with. As they're adding new banks to RippleNet on a regular basis, a couple per week or whatever it is, that's increasing the value of the network. And so what they're finding, what these banks said, as soon as he said, and I heard this, and it's the first thing I thought, 40 banks said that it's not that much better. Well, if everybody were on it, it would be right. And this is why I'm going to talk to you guys about the technology bell curve later, because there are, well, I'll get into it towards the end of the video, but you'll understand why it's important, and you'll understand why, of course, without a tremendous network doing it, the full value just can't be realized. I'll get into that a little bit later, though. Okay. Now, Brad, on his side, and this was a fun comparison. I really enjoyed this one. He said that he sees the dynamic of Ripple versus Swift as how Walmart viewed Amazon about 20 years ago. Isn't that funny? Not so much a threat. We don't really need to innovate that much. Well, which company's bigger now? Is it Amazon or is it Walmart? Which one would you rather own? Okay, because I know what the answer is for me. He also said, Brad Garlinghouse, CEO of Ripple, said Swift network includes many banks, but AOL, they used to have a lot of customers. AOL was gigantic, wasn't it? And it just kind of goes to show that behemoths can fall. And I'm familiar with it. I actually lived through this. I'm young, but I'm not that young. I'm a 35-year-old man, and I remember being in junior high. And my parents got Prodigy Classic. Have you guys even heard of what this is? It's like a way worse version of AOL, even back then. But it was huge. At one point, I can't remember. I'd have to Google the numbers real quick, but I don't know if they had like 1 million subscribers or something like that. And it was one of those walled garden networks, and I remember being in like 7th or 8th grade. And my friends all had AOL. And because SMTP technology for emailing, it actually wasn't really implemented to that point. I don't even know if it had existed at that point, if the protocol had actually been written, but it definitely hadn't been implemented. And so pretty much 100% of my friends were on AOL, and I was on Prodigy Classic, the crappier equivalent, and I could not email my friends from me using Prodigy to their AOL email accounts. Technologically impossible at that point. The technology was not implemented. And I just think that's so funny, and that's why a lot of what I'm hearing from Gottfried here, it's about, GPI does it, and blockchain, I don't know, maybe years away. I'm just thinking, incumbent, there you go. Well, you're about to get shook up, man. I tell you what, you got another thing coming if you can just sit here with your GPI technology and not get disrupted. I'm telling you, that's just not the way the world works. But, another funny analogy Brad made, and this is not the first time I've heard him say this, but he was comparing like the horse and buggy that is Swift to like GPI turning it into a faster horse and buggy. He said, well, you could do that, but wouldn't it be better if you had a Ferrari? And I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said. He said the horse and buggy and the Ferrari. And I wish I had pulled up that image now. I'm not going to try and find it while I got you guys listening to me, but there's this hilarious image of a car that has like this cardboard. It's a real car in the picture. It's got like this cardboard cutout placed around the frame of the vehicle, and it's drawn as if it's a Ferrari. It's a hilarious picture. If I can find that, I'll actually, if I remember, I'll link it in the description below. But it made me laugh when I saw it anyway. And so when Brad said that, it made me think of it. And Brad said something. He just said, fundamentally, he and Gottfried, Ripple and Swift, they fundamentally have just different views about the importance of blockchain technology in the world. And that's probably not news to anybody, but it's a fundamental truth and it's worth noting. And disruption is coming, like I just said a minute ago. Disruption is coming, whether or not Swift likes it. And I'm betting on the side of Ripple. I think that their technology, it's better for so many reasons. And do you want the horse and buggy? Do you want the horse and buggy with a cardboard cut out of a Ferrari on top of it, or do you want the Ferrari? And also worth noting, Swift's GPI solution. It is, and again, that's the GPI. That's what's competing essentially. It's an oversimplification, but it's essentially doing what Xcurrent is doing. Swift's GPI, it's unidirectional, whereas Xcurrent is bidirectional. And so one of the best analogies I've heard to try and get you just conceptually understand why that's important is you could imagine several runners within a relay race. And it's kind of like, okay, the first person has the baton, it's handed off to the second person has the baton. And if you're the fourth person, you might be wondering, is that baton getting to me? And you can't go back and check. With Swift's GPI, you can't check it. The messaging is one way. There is technologically no way to go back and be like, hey, is this coming? Is it coming? And with Xcurrent, it's bidirectional, so you can do that, and that's important. I think customers are going to value and appreciate that. To not be able to check on a transaction, don't you think that matters? Well, I sure do. I think that's a rather consequential, frankly. All right, let's see what else. Oh, volatility, right. So then Gottfried brought up the issue of volatility as it pertains to cryptocurrencies. And he says that's the reason that a lot of the banks within their network, they have a concern. The volatility, what are you going to do with the price of XRP changing, essentially is what he's getting at. And then Brad said, and I love how he just smacked this one down, frankly, he said that people that propagate, or people that cite that claim are, quote, propagating misinformation. Boom! That's what Brad says. You are propagating misinformation, Mr. Gottfried, CEO of Swift. And then he went on to explain why. He said that Swift transactions currently take 2 to 3 days, and that comes out to about 180,000 seconds, versus XRP volatility lasting, the transaction is about 3 seconds. So you're only worried about 3 seconds of volatility versus 180,000 seconds. So what he's talking about is he's comparing low volatility with fiat currency over a long time frame versus high volatility of crypto asset like XRP over a very short time frame. And as it turns out, given both of those factors, XRP is less of a risk. And that's very substantial, and that's been cited many times in the past. And so for Gottfried to sit here say that straight-faced, I'm just like, oh, come on, you're not a stupid man. You have to know that's complete and utter nonsense, right? Okay, let's see. What did I write next here? Oh, right. Brad pointed this out too. The role of market makers on the Swift platform. So Forex market makers, foreign exchange market makers, basically the way that these transfers work is if you're a market maker, you're locking in the risk for, well, it is a risk, because there's volatility over such a long period of time, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5 days. If you're a market maker, you come in and you decide whether or not you're willing to take that risk. If you're willing to take the risk, then you better hope that in terms of volatility, either there's an increase in value and hopefully not a decrease, or else you're going to be out as a market maker. But with XRP, you don't have to worry about that so much because the volatility is so minimal. And so you do still need market makers no matter what. But a lot of the market makers are just kind of people that were sitting on an exchange anyway. Think about that. So there's a lot of people, if you're just buying or selling anyway, that can be part of the pool of liquidity, if you're on an exchange like Bittrex. So it's completely revolutionary in that regard, just completely. All right, moving on. I'm getting to the end of the stuff about the video here, the notes I took anyway. All right. Swift CEO makes the point that there are almost no regulations in terms of crypto, and then Brad has to smack him down again. He says he kind of throws his hands up and he looks back and forth. He's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, Brad responds that there are KYC and AML regulations, so that's KYC, know your customer, AML, anti-money laundering regulations, and that's already, the bank's already taking care of that at both ends of the transaction. The onboard and offboarding of the currency, as far as the banks are concerned, that is occurring. And, the fact that in between there's XRP moving from one exchange to another, doesn't mitigate those requirements. Absolutely, they're still in place. So again, Gottfried, I don't know how he couldn't have known that. It made me wonder. You know what it made me think? When I was hearing some of these things come out of his mouth, it's like, this is a guy that maybe, whether it's his circle of friends or whoever he's got to persuade that they're doing the right thing, he's like, here are my talking points, but he's spitting them out in front of the competition, like the strongest competition they're ever going to possibly have for the entirety of their existence, and it's silly. So, comments like that, they're just not going to stand the test of time, and I kind of feel bad for the guy. I don't think he's a stupid guy. He's just got his little talking points going, and that's what he's going to do, and that's how Swift is proceeding. So I think that's all I got on as far as the stuff for the debate. Now, it's worth noting, and of course I'm going to put the link for this video below. This video is about 18 and a half minutes. It got cut off. It's not the entire debate between the two. I don't know how long the session went, but I scavenged the internet, and this is the only thing that I personally could find. I think it's all that's been uploaded because this conversation took place today, this morning. So, if I can find the full-length video, I'm sure I'll have some additional thoughts on it, and I'll also share that with you in a future video. It's just not public. It looks to me like whoever recorded this, it may have just been a guy with their smartphone just holding it up and maybe got tired of recording after 18 minutes. So I'm thankful for that luckily this is on the internet at least, but for now it's all that we have. So, moving on here. And this is this is another big thing. Look at this article. This is from CoinDesk. Swift chief announces trial DLT integration with R3. And just out of nowhere, Gottfried, Swift CEO, he stated that he announced that they were about to make an announcement. I think that's hilarious, just the phrasing of that. They either should have made it prior to this, or maybe you shouldn't have done it yet, because it just sounds weird. But basically, Swift is partnering up with R3, R3 having created the Corda network, and R3 having created the Corda settler. The Corda network, I'm not going to rehash all of this. I'll actually link to one of my previous videos that discusses the Corda network versus the Corda settler in case you're interested. But the Corda settler is the one that's capable of conducting, it's settling. So it can actually move funds, okay? And there's not a whole lot of details on how that works there, as far as who's providing the liquidity to facilitate such transaction with the Corda settler has not been announced. In the case of XRapid, which is also a settler, that answer is clear. It's exchanges. Those are the entities that are used for liquidity. And so it makes me wonder, is the Corda settler also going to use cryptocurrency exchanges to source liquidity? Again, not announced, don't know. I'm sure they have something in mind. Maybe they have something that's actually in place and they just haven't announced. But anyway, so this was announced, and it's actually, as it turns out, it's just a trial. It's a proof of concept. So it doesn't mean that they're actually going anywhere with this, and it's not clear what this means, because the Swift GPI, the way it's programmed is GPI. It does integrate with the Corda settler, but again, not the Corda network. And it can only improve potentially settlement, but not the GPI messaging. So the fact that they're integrating, or at least in a test phase, the fact that Swift is integrating with Corda settler, again, this has nothing to do with the unidirectional messaging. And as far as settlement, what they're doing, they haven't clarified this either, and I've read multiple articles on this. This is the one that I chose to pull up because it's CoinDesk, and everybody knows CoinDesk. But even in their official announcement, they didn't say what the intent was. This because, as it turns out, yes, Corda settler, it settles. The only thing they've announced it settles with, it can settle with anything, as they program it to anyway. But Corda settler settles with XRP, and that's the only crypto they've announced that it's going to settle with. So then you hear, okay, Swift's going to settle with Corda settler. Does that mean they're settling with XRP? Well, not so fast. First of all, it's just a trial, and second of all, even if that's what they were thinking, and they certainly aren't going to announce that not anytime soon. For me, it's more like look, let me show you this. This will kind of help you get at what I'm thinking about. Have you guys seen a technology bell curve before? Take a look at this. So, running through this real quick, there are 5 different stages. There are the innovators, and I like how they label this up here in this particular picture. Techies, try it. And then so those are the first people in the innovators. Then there are the early adopters, which are probably what you and I are in crypto right now. I don't know if we're still technically in the innovators phase. We might be the early adopters. We're somewhere in here with cryptocurrency in general. But these people, us, visionaries, get ahead. And then here the pragmatists stick with the herd. Those people are the early majority. And look at how the bell curve goes up. So that's a huge chunk of the populace at large. After that, there are the people that come late to the party. They're conservatives like, hold on. Okay? And then the final people, the skeptics, are like, no way. But they eventually adopt it. These are the laggards. And there's another image down here I'll pull up too. It's the same bell curve, but they assign percentages to it. And I guess this is the guy that came up with the concept. It says Everett Rogers, Diffusion of Innovations, 1962. So maybe he was the first one to come up with the concept. So it says 2.5% of this part of the bell curve are innovators. Early adopters are 13.5%. Early majorities, 34%. Late majority, also 34%. And then the laggards are 16%. And so, I think with them, Swift being the incumbent, and I think the fact that they made it clear, they have an unwillingness to truly innovate. They have an unwillingness to adopt blockchain technology. I think the fact that they're not further developing their own in-house blockchain technology for settlement, and of course they'd have to create a coin. Think what that would mean. You'd have to create a market for it, and then you'd have to convince the world to actually give it true value, because otherwise you have a bank coin, which would actually just be a liability backed by fiat currency. So what are their solutions if they're not going to create their own cryptocurrency? Well, I think they're kind of like hedging their bets, essentially. To me, it looks like it's a what if. It's and this is all speculation, but if you're asking me, just my gut feeling as soon as I read through this, and based on the way they're behaving and everything that Swift CEO Gottfried said, I think it's one of those things where it's just like, well, if Ripple really does start to achieve notable market share, there'll become a tipping point where if Swift wants to remain relevant, they'll have the option potentially via the Corda settler to settle with XRP. Or if there's other cryptocurrencies, whatever they want to do, but of course XRP is the best settlement mechanism, so it'd be XRP. And you could say that might slow adoption of Ripple's technology to some degree, but with you and I, if you and I are XRP holders, this is not financial advice, I'm an XRP holder, as long as XRP is adopted to us price-wise, it frankly doesn't matter. I just want to see XRP do well. Now, of course, that means I want to see Ripple do well, but I want to see it used en masse, at large. And so this would be perfectly fine. This is perfectly reasonable. And so again, it could be just a situation where they're not going to develop their own blockchain technology. They're not going to develop their own coin, but they could become so obscure that it completely ruin their network if they don't allow settlement with cryptocurrencies at some point in the future. So I think they're just they're not saying it, but it's like we're leaving the door open. But even so, with the test, they said with this proof of concept that they announced today. They're not testing the settlement with XRP. They're using it allows here. Let me see if I can pull this up so I can read one little 1-2 sentence thing verbatim. Yeah, here it is. It's traditional rails. That's what it was. Traditional payment rails. It says Swift GPI will integrate directly to Corda Settler, the application that allows participants on the Corda blockchain to initiate and settle payment obligations. Here's the part: via both traditional and blockchain-based rails. Traditional and blockchain-based rails, explained R3 co-founder Todd McDonald. This will enable obligations created or represented on Corda to be settled via the large and growing Swift GPI network. So they don't explain functionally how this is going to beef up or make GPI act in a more efficient way at all, whether from the standpoint of time or cost. They don't explain what that could potentially do. But it looks like they're saying traditional rails because we know they're not doing blockchain. That's why I'm saying I think this is like their ace in the hole, man. Like that's what this is. That's what it looks like to me. So we'll see. I'm going to keep tracking this. What do you guys think? Tell me in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Again, it's a fun hobby for me, so if you guys want to interact, I read everything that everybody posts, and my channel's so small I don't get a whole lot of comments, but I love it when people do take the time to write something. So I want to thank you so much for taking some time to listen. I think that's everything I wanted to say for now. But, and again, if you would hit like and subscribe, super duper appreciate it. I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say, do, or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Thanks for listening.